So, I want to begin by asking you guys, who is an author that you think gets a lot of hype but does not deserve that hype? I'll go first. Colleen Hoover.
Agreed. For me, it would be Chetan Bhagat. Though I started reading because of him, but it was such a bad experience that I wanted to explore more.
Anna Huang. I said what I said.
Okay, so you might have already guessed what this video is going to be about. Today, we're here to discuss all about books and literature and the various genres of it and where we stand on like what our opinions are about these genres. So, since the written word has been established, literature has become a solace and a place of comfort for the people who consume it and for the people who write it. And today, in this second episode of Side B, we're going to explore how different genres of literature mean very different to a lot of people, and we three have like a varied palette when it comes to reading books, and we have very varied tastes. So we're going to start by telling you what our favorite genres are and what we leanate towards when it comes to literature. But before we get into that, we would just like to thank Nook for giving us the space to shoot. Like the name, it is a very cozy cafe situated in a bustling city, and it has a large menu of food and coffee that will very quickly become your favorite. So, this is their address, and be sure to support their business anytime you're around here. So, yeah, let's get into the video, and we'll start by telling you our favorite genres. You want to go?
Yeah, so for me, my favorite genre, one of my favorite genres would be dark romance and dark romance and smut technically. So that, and though I also read like a lot of other books, and I also read fiction, non-fiction, but that is the most consistent genre.
So I go through phases when it comes to books. So I generally like fantasy. Then I like romance also, but I also like the sad stuff that will just make me cry all the time.
That's very relatable. For me, it's I read a lot of classics. I read slice of life a lot, so like character centric books rather than plot centric books. They really bring out the nuances of a story and talk about like bring out a varied set of writing skills that the author can offer to you. And other than that, I'm open to reading most genres, but when it comes to genres like fiction and romance, I usually do not pick up those books. I just don't know why.
I mean, everybody has its own preferences, their own tastes, and some all of that. But I really think that for me, it is like an escape from reality. I do not want to I would not want to indulge in a book which would which would bring back those hard realities of the world, because that is not my purpose of reading, because I would really want to step out of the world, read something about utopia, something that is not in the world. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the biggest reasons why we like decided to shoot today's episode was because we have a ongoing debate about how some people prefer reading dark romance and smart, and some people absolutely hate it. And by those some people, I mean me. And so, do you want to let's talk about the appeal and let's talk about what is not very great when it comes to that.
So one, you just get to read something that you don't have to think about a lot. You don't have to really invest in it. Ke, is this right? Is this wrong? You just read it. It's just like whatever.
Yeah, but then see the thing is ki uh when like I agree with Soumya's point, you do not have to like put in a lot of mental energy into reading smart. And personally I also read like a lot of other heavy books like classics, or I read existentialism. So like for me to so I cannot read that kinds of books itna sara ke like there's like sometimes when I read those and then I just have that block ki I just can't get information into my head anymore, and that is when I resort to pleasure reading, because I don't need to put a lot of mental energy there. I just have to like read and go through the sexual parts, because that is because for me that would be my like source of like stimulation or arousal, rather than like yeah, rather than some other source.
See, that is the part which is problematic to me. I understand that thing of that after a certain point, it is very difficult. Like, it becomes too information heavy or too emotionally, it becomes too much to consume serious literature on, like, one after the other. And I completely get that. I have those phases. I get into book slumps because a book has had like a heavy impact on me. But what I do not understand is that all of these books which have sex in it and which have like a lot of like romance, it's very problematic. And you can't disagree with me, it is very
Why
problematic.
is it problematic?
Do you really need me? I mean, come on. It's like in these books, it is fantasized how a guy should be jealous and how he should be possessive and overly protective. But in real life, none of us want that. And we know that.
I get that some of the morally grey characters are like too much, and even I don't like morally grey characters that much. But at some point, you just need an escape because men are disappointing me these days. So, what can we say?
I mean, I just feel that everybody has their own well preferences also, but I also think that yeah, as like I wouldn't mind reading like that, and like I don't see it as a wrong thing to read also. Like if the author or if the reader um is like they, what is the purpose of the book, to for the reader to be like to be engaged throughout the book, and if the reader and if the author is able to like accomplish that thing, and the reader is sitting through the book because of any kind of like stuff in there, then what's the problem? It serves the purpose of the book. And I get that it is a little bit problematic. It gives unrealistic expectations to women, especially those girls who do not have had like
Knowledge.
yeah, knowledge, or they're like at a very formative stage where they do not like, they get unrealistic expectations of what men are like in bed. But like there's always like, I think there's always a hit of reality you get from the world, that it is not like this. So like I don't think like the pleasure reading would have that impact, because in the back of the mind I also have the thought that I wouldn't like, there's no way that I'm getting all of this in real life.
Okay, so we were a minute ago, we were discussing Colleen Hoover. I want to talk about books that have like it's not just literature anymore. They've commercialized it completely by making it into movies. It ends with us. We have even had the After series.
Oh my god. I have a
Okay,
lot to
so
say.
where do we stand? Like, is it good to like take a plot of a book and turn it into a movie?
It's not bad, but if you do it correctly.
Give
Because
an example.
it ends with us had shit publicity. it was completely publicized in a very different way, and the movie was there's a lot of controversy around that, right? So it's like it was shown as this flowery romance light-hearted movie, but it is not. It does have very serious dark stuff in there, and it was publicized the wrong way. After series, it just the books itself were fanfic, so it turning into a movie, it got even degraded more.
I feel that turning into like a dark romance book into a movie is not a good idea. It's like the worst idea ever, because one thing, because a book can contain a lot of like it can contain a lot of uncensored stuff, while movies, they have to limit that to some extent, and by like limiting that, the movie doesn't turn out good, because the purpose of the movie is technically um, showcasing the sexual desire, sexual arousal, sexual stimulation. But because of like there's a certain censorship in like cinema or like movies, that is why they cannot show it, and it just turns out to be a bad movie, because that is the main focus, and the whole focus of that book or the movie goes away, because they can't like fully show it. So like turning books, dark romance books, like for example Kalpamia. I
That
mean,
book
I
was
haven't
torture.
I haven't read that book. I have seen the movie, but I haven't read that book. But I can say for sure, whatever smut the book had, no way they could show it in the movie. Like not even 1/10 of the
I have a
like
lot to say
one
about
tenth
that.
of the part.
I read that book because I watched the movie because there was such a hype about it. And I'm like, I want to see if the movie is this bad, how worse could the book be? It was torture to say the very least. I sat through that entire book because I had I was very stubborn about, no, I'm going to complete this book. Let me tell you, don't read it.
I want to talk about the flip side of this. So I think it's not a bad idea to turn a book into a movie because it's like the especially these days with like so much attention being given to visual stimulation, it's it's a new way of like putting out plots in a different format, right? But I also think that if you're making art out of art, give the same treatment, give the same attention and care that you had given to the original plot to the movie, right? And when you pick up something like It Ends With Us, which isn't a great book to begin with, and you turn it into a movie, it's not going to turn out that way. A very good example, which I actually think the show turned out better than the actual book, was BBC's Normal People. The treatment, the cast, the setting, everything was on point. Not only that, it enhanced the overall experience of the plot itself. Even there's a movie coming out. It's by an Irish. The book is by an Irish author, and it's called Small Things Like These. And it has a movie coming out this year, I think, and with the same name. And it looks amazing. The production value is good. You can see that they actually cared about the plot and they put this that effort into making it into a film. So when you do that, when that attention of detail is present, it can definitely turn out very well.
That is what I'm saying. No, but you can't like the attention. You can't put like great attention and detail, and you can't just like the whole movie can't proceed as the whole book
That's
in dark
something that
romances, because you legally I don't think you can show stuff like that. And also movies are more accessible than books are, so like there's a great harm to children.
yeah. See, another show that was really good was Bridgerton. I haven't read the books. My sister has, and she kept telling me that that entire book, she kept viewed it from a very different perspective. She kept the book aside, she kept the series aside, and she said that it is actually better than the books to some extent, because the production, like you said, if the production is great, if the story is good, it's amazing.
I was going to say about Bridgerton. The thing is, the setting, the costume, the characters are so on point, and the whole they like the characters just complement like the characters in the book. So like the people who are playing the roles, they enhance the whole setting, and that is why it has become such a hype series, and that is why so many people do not know that it is like adapted from a series of book, or if they know, they find it better to watch the series than to read the book because of the setting. First thing, it is the setting is so beautiful, you just can't like not watch it.
Yeah, I think it's associated with like the grandeur of it, you know. So like you would really like to watch all of these, you know, like royal people
Yeah, Victorian
just,
age.
yeah, exactly, going about their lives. Okay, so I want to discuss a very specific book. Um, and it's this book called A Little Life. It's by Hanya Yanagihara. And please, if you're planning to read it, check the trigger warnings before you do, because it's a very emotionally heavy book, and all the reviews of the book are extremely divided. So there are people who love it because of how emotionally heavy it is, and people who hate it for the same reason, because they believe, like, the people who hate it believe that the author, just to just to introduce emotionality in the book, is putting the character through a myriad of incidents which are just gut wrenching to read and to consume. So do you think it's fair to use literature as a means of, so like there are people who have read it and they still can't process it completely or can't stop thinking about it? Do you think it is fair to produce a piece of art, even if you can call it that, to just traumatize your readers for the sake of it?
But I feel that it also depends on the reader's capacity. So like if the author is already given trigger warnings, and it's the reader's choice to continue to read that book or even start that book. So like if the reader is willing to go through um, the emotional events that have happened in the book, and as you say that they are very severe, and it may like harm, or like it may hinder your own emotional growth, or it may, you may start to question your emotional stability, your emotional state of mind. So but like there's always an option where readers can like not read that book or stop the book when it gets too heavy, or maybe like, yeah, or read something in between so that they have like they have like a fresh thing coming into their minds whenever they're reading such a heavy stuff. So like, I mean, it's just like it's one of the style of the it's one of the styles of the author to like dump that trauma into the book. So like, but it also is the reader's choice that would the reader want to read it or not. Like as you said, some people love it because they have that capacity or they have that feeling to read a gut wrenching book.
No, but then that's the thing. You do, like, yes, people's um like resilience to these kinds of things is very subjective. But when you have 90% of the people who have consumed the book saying that this is the saddest piece of literature that they've read, not even, I have read it and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone that I know. No matter, like, yes, it's written beautifully. Yes, the characters they're molded into amazing people, whatever. But it's just, I know what, like, since I've read it, I know what I went through, and it's the thing of I wouldn't want anyone else to put themselves through that, even if it is just for like consuming it.
So even I agree with another on this, because when you're reading that, you already know that it's not a fluffy book or it's not a cute book, because a lot of readers who want to read that would not, search for that book in particular. So if they're reading the trigger warnings, and if they're willing to go forward with reading that, like she said, they can always stop when it gets too heavy. And
But then that's the thing, that at that point you're attached to this plot line, you're attached to the characters. As much as you want to stop like there to protect yourself, you also don't want to because you're invested in that book.
But I feel there's always a clash between morality and ethics, and like on one side, and art and other forms of expression on other, because there's always some kind of conflict that's going to be happen, some kind of extremity that someone's going to cross that boundary, and they're going to produce something that would emotionally, or maybe yeah, emotionally, mentally, would touch that reader's heart, reader's mind so much that they would be engrossed in like the whole thought process of the book or the whole plot of the book, until they physically do something to come out of that thing. I think there's always been a clash, and there's always been some kind of extremity, and there's always this thing, there's always one thing that I've noticed: whenever there's no extremity in some kind of art form, people just don't like it, they just label it as a mediocre work.
exactly, it does not have that level of depth anymore. That is what is being told. Like, it needs to be either too good, like in a way that it's too happy, that makes you want to hope, or it needs to be very sad.
No, but I still don't agree with you guys because I read sad literature all the time. Okay, for me, like it's hard to read a book which is not sad because I don't know. It's just a kind of plot that I'm more attracted to. But this is where I feel like I draw the line. So even when I was reading the book, I had to take like a 3 month break in between because it was getting too much for me. And the minute I read the last sentence of the book, I regretted investing so much time in it because it it doesn't have a. I'm not saying that books need a satisfying ending, but it doesn't have that. It just the weight of everything. It it dawns upon you by when you finish the book, and you get into like a very negative thought process about everything. And yeah, I just wouldn't recommend it. And I also think that as like an author, I can't digest the fact how. So it's it's that thing of, it's a 700-page book, right? So she has obviously invested a lot of time and energy into it, and she has these characters are well thought out and well planned, and these characters, they have to be close to her in order for them to come out in a way that they become close to the reader, right? And I just can't imagine how she sat through the process of like tearing down this individual piece by piece, this one individual that she has created. And how did she, like, in some way it feels like she has no empathy for him because in the end he doesn't get anything.
See, I think for that point of view, I kind of agree with you to a point where it's that you cannot put your readers through so much that at the end of it, they just start questioning everything. They start to change, and not in a good way, how they see the world and how they see things in a way. But when you think about her writing this book, it could be like a very cathartic experience for her to a point where she's letting whatever comes to her mind, because not everything can be imagination, right? It could be something that she went through or whatever, and it could kind of be also cathartic for her to complete that book in a way.
But like yeah, I mean, I also think that maybe the author just didn't, like, she wrote all of that because of her own the dark side of the mind she cannot express in like a social situation, and that is when she starts to write this book. And this, she wants to show the darkest side of human um minds, or the darkest side of human emotions. and maybe she doesn't relate with the book at all, but she's just too like good, or she's excellent at just um putting out characters that would be a that can be associated, and like the readers would like, they would just connect with the character. She just has that capability. What if, I mean, we can't like argue on that, but yeah.
And I feel every piece of art, when it comes from expression that way, a lot of one of the few of the most beautiful pieces of art, they evoke a lot of sadness in us, or that deeper thought in us when it comes to that. So I think when you have a piece of sad literature or whatever, I don't think it's ethically wrong to write it.
But there's a difference between evoking a certain thought in you or evoking, like, striking a note in your emotionality, and there's a difference between creating something that's just mind numbingly sad and it overpowers everything that you work for. So, okay. I We were discussing how um, classics are not the most frequent choice of readers because they can be difficult to consume. But I don't think that they're difficult to consume. I think the reading level generally has declined. So it seems like they're inaccessible. What do you guys think?
I think for me personally, like so like the thing is, I think that the classics, for example, you take any classic which seems like a romance, like has a romance plot on the outer or the superficial level, but uh, but inside, like on the deeper level, you always have some underlying themes that yeah, of course every classic has that, and that is what I love about classics, because you can't find that in like, well, books. Like, I mean, you can, but like not books like dark romance books. Okay, of course. So like for me to process that underlying theme, or for me to get hold of that theme, I have to take a break from reading that classic, like to from reading that book, and then I have to read something else, and then um it it invokes like it my start like my thought process starts like thinking about that book, because I've already read a portion of that book, and then I take a break, and then um during that break I start thinking about the themes and what is the plot trying to convey to me. So I think for me it's not, and vocab, yeah, I get your point where because the reading level has decreased, people can't consume heavy vocabulary nowadays, so that might also be a reason to take a break. But for me it is to just invoke that, like to invoke my mind into that state where I have to think about, I have to take a break.
For me, classics, I have tried reading them. It's not that I haven't. And to an the plot might be actually good and everything, but what I've noticed is that it's not as animating for me when I read classics, to a point where I cannot imagine it. Like the descriptions to me are very bland in a way, to a point where it doesn't connect. I think that is the reason why m- even I can understand vocabulary as well. For me, the reading level is not that low, but I just feel that sometimes classics, even though the plot is good, it's not always that animating.
I think, okay, so I have 2 points for that. First, I think that not only, like, right now it's very crucial to get into classics because of social media. English has it's seeing the worst time ever. Every day I hear new slang and it makes me more mad about where we're going, like, linguistically. And I also think that it it just it enhances your communication skills to a way that whenever you speak out, there's that thing of it separates you from the crowd, right? Because you're in that habit of understanding the nuances and complexities of literature, and slowly but surely you start to inculcate that same thing in your own vernacular, and it becomes it just there's this part of it that I find very, appealing, and I really want to be that. So I really try to, and I also think that I to some extent I do agree that classics are difficult to consume, but I feel like you need to inculcate the habit of getting into it.
Yeah.
You start with literature that is, like you said, that you have a problem with imagining it,
Yeah.
and it may become more character centric than plot centric, so difficult to consume and very thematic. Start with books like Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde or Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. These books, they keep you gripped, but they're also so they you can look at it from a very superficial level, or you can look at it at a deeper level, so it gives you that choice to divulge at whatever capacity you want to divulge. And I think that's the beauty of classics.
I also think that classics focus more on the narrative of the novel, and today authors focus more on plot twists or the plot of the story, and that is why when you are transitioning from reading today's books to classics, you are always in search of that plot twist, or you always want that plot twist, while classics only offer beautiful narratives. And people who do not like to read narratives, or people who find it boring because it can be monotonous for for example, so they might seem hard to read classics. I mean, that is not what. So I love reading narratives. It's like one of my most top genres. But people who cannot, I know people who cannot. So that is why they find it very hard to read classics, or they need to take a break between that, because it is a very different genre from what they read.
I think this is more like it reveals the fact that literature and media essentially has turned into a way to seek attention rather than a form of communication. So, like you said, that classics focus on the narrative of the story and how the characters and the themes convey that narrative. But now it's like it has shifted to having a good,
Plot.
having like a good plot twist that
Yeah.
will shock your reader.
I think that's why a lot of people also read sad books. I'm not aware about you, but I know a lot of people who read only thriller and sad books because they're like they don't know what is going to happen next. Even in sad books, you're like, इससे बुरा तो क्या ही हो सकता है, and then they hit you with something. So I think that is one of the things that because it has gotten very plot centric, I think that is why it connects sort of.
But I think that I mean, I would recommend, suggest whatever to inculcate reading classics in your reading habits, because I get that it benefits you a lot. And plus, once you develop that habit of liking narratives, or you develop the habit of liking like a particular classic, it, you obviously, there's no necessity that you like every classic or every narrative. But if you develop a habit of exploring classics, it you can have like a very different point of view, and it becomes very easy for you to see underlying themes in any other books. I mean, it becomes a very very easy job to do, and it is one of the things I love about it.
Okay, so let's do the segment we're very excited for. Let's talk about Indian authors because that's what Kala Cassette is about. We're trying to bring light to Indian culture and Indian art. So, we first want to talk about Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. um, her book The Palace of Illusions is getting a lot of attention, rightfully so, because it is a beautiful book. It's the Mahabharat from the point of view of Draupadi, and it is the most lyrical piece of writing that I have ever read. It it encapsulates you with its beauty and its sadness, that that it resonates with women. Even though it's a mythological retelling, it resonates to every woman who reads it in today's day and time. And it just, like, the characters are so well. Draupadi is amazing, beautiful. I have dreams about rereading that piece of literature because it gets better every time, and she surprises you with how good she is with each chapter and each line.
I agree. This strong mindset she has. I mean, to able to endure and to able to endure and able to take in such a masculine environment and such a patriarchal thinking. And plus that is the point which I resonate with that book, because it is the capacity, like Chitra Banerjee has shown wonderfully that how a woman who's in that situation where she's surrounded by males, and yeah, it's I'm sorry, I'm speechless about it. I cannot form words because it's such a beautiful book. I'm like, sorry, I'm just like, ऐसे I can't find words. It's like खत्म हो गई मेरी vocabulary यहाँ पे आके. I also like Forests of Enchantment.
Yes.
It's like it's from the point of view of Sita, and it also is beautifully written. And I would love all of you to like read one of the books from Chitra
Even
Banerjee,
The Last
Queen.
Queen,
Yeah.
it's a little, if you pick it up after Forest of Enchantments and Palace of Illusions, it's a little slower, as like considering the pace and the narrative, but still a beautiful book which again is female centric, and it brings light to how strong women can be in dire situations. Even her book Independence is very good. Some other authors that we have for you are Satyajit Ray's literature is timeless and beautiful. His short stories or even larger format books are amazing. We have Rosarita by Anita Desai. Um, Korel Dasgupta is another author who does mythological retellings from the point of view of women. So we have Ahalya by him, Kunti by him, The Long Silence by Shashi Deshpande, and if you want to get into political literature, Sashi Tharoor is a big recommendation. So yeah, if you guys have any other, you can.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much. I mean, yeah, they're all very
Ah,
good authors.
yeah, Amitav Ghosh.
Yeah.
So let's let's go to a different genre that like expand from what we've been discussing so far. Fantasy. Okay, so fantasy is a big, it has a lot of tropes, if I'm not, yeah, yeah, so it has a lot of tropes in it which are basically subplots of a book, and it's world building, it is exploring new, it's basically tapping into the author's imagination in the wildest way possible. So what where it's often considered childlike, that only people are like children are
Yeah.
supposed to consume it. So
A lot of people call it cringe in a way, but when you really read it, you see the complexity of how ahead in time you would have to think to create a plot that is just engaging, that keeps you hooked. I've read books that are like 900 pages long for fantasy, and I have finished them in like 4 days because I just could not put that book down. And I was so hooked at that point, and it all interconnects. It's not like one single book that's 900 pages, it's like 3 to 4 book series, and it's not childish when it comes to it. There is politics, okay, there's a lot of crime based what can I say, tropes as well. But at some point when you look at them, you have to think that imagination to be that deep and that well thought, it is unbelievable.
Personally, I don't like reading fantasy because I just can't. I do not think that it is childlike. It is very hard to imagine, and that is why I cannot read fantasy, because in my mind I cannot fathom a world without the basic realities of our world. So I can't just imagine a world with I don't know, different morals, different ethics, different locations. I can't do that. I can read fiction, but I can't read fantasy. It is difficult for me to fathom, and it is difficult for me to imagine. And I would in like no way say that it is childlike, because it requires a lot of imaginative and mental power to go to that author's level of imagination and like grasp those themes and plots.
I am not a big fantasy reader, but there's a very hyper specific genre of fantasy that I really like, and I don't really like. I don't know if there's like a name for it, or but I read this book called Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I might have butchered his name, but I'm sorry. So that is a dystopian fiction which is set in this world where they breed children who are basically human clones, and all like their entire purpose of, so there's this school where these children grow up their entire lives, and where after a certain age, so like I think 16, 17, they're sent to different homes to live with other people, and at a certain age they all of their organs in their body are are harvested for actual human beings who need organs, so they're clones made to help humans, and the narrative is from the side of these children, and it is one of the most saddest books I've ever read,
I can
but
imagine.
it is a gorgeous piece of literature, which it doesn't it's one of those books that you don't realize how sad it is until you reach that certain point and it all comes falling down,
Yeah.
and then you're just like, wow. And I never thought that, up until I read that book, I never thought that fantasy had that capability in it to bring you down like that, to just be so thematic, be so beautiful, and have that. The main reason why I don't read fantasy is that I feel like it doesn't have that humanistic side that I crave. That my threshold for it, it's just not, it's not met. But this book, it really changed my point of view towards it. And then there's this other book, it's called This Is How We Lose the Time War. And it's like a time travel book where, so it's the entire book is amidst a war, and these two people who are on opposite sides, so they're basically enemies, and they start like, there are these little ways through which they start communicating with one another, but their upper heads, they don't know that these people are communicating, and initially it's like this motivation that now I'm talking to the enemy, I'm trash talking essentially, but they fall in love eventually, and it's like they can never be together, but yeah. And again, it's very well written. It has short chapters, so I find short chapters to be very reaffirming, because I'm like, it's 5 pages, I'll get through that, it's easy, you know. So yeah, it has very short chapters. It's written in an immaculate way, and it's the format of the book is a little difficult to get used to. But again, these kind of fantasy literature, I'm like, yeah, sign me up. I'm down for it. I will be there. So yeah.
So the books that I have read in fantasy are more like it has either politics, it's either like a crime scene, or either it's a rebellion going against a government. It involves dragons. So that is one thing that I really enjoy, because when it's kind of like kuch magic चाहिए life में, that sort of a thing. And so when you read that, it just transports you to a whole nother world. But if there was a one book series that I really love, that is very close to my heart. Reading it now might be something that I might find like it's very childlike, because I started reading it when I was like in my pre-puberty, yeah, pre-teens. So I start it's the Shadowhunter Chronicles, and I love that book. It has so many books, but it is based in this world itself. So it's like humans, and then the shadow hunters are like the protectors of humans from demons. They are part angel and part human. So it's like they exist all over the world. And a lot of books and movies where I've read, they're like, अगर aliens आएंगे तो सिर्फ अमेरिका में आएंगे. It's not that. It's like distributed all over the world. Everyone needs protecting. So they're like, and the characters have been put together in such a way that you would love to read about it.
I mean, I can't relate, but I would love to explore the genre. The only point I've gotten through is time travel for now. उससे अभी देखते हैं, आगे देखते हैं, उससे ज़्यादा अभी तक मैं पहुँची हूँ नहीं, बट या
I would say one thing, that if you're planning to read Shadowhunters, start with the Inferior Devices series and the Last Star series. Those two I feel are the best.
So sadly, we only have one more topic remaining, which is short stories or novels.
short stories, please.
Novels. I cannot go through with short stories. I just cannot. मुझे लगता है it does not do it justice.
I feel short stories for me they're very reassuring because I think that when when I read like a short story, I know there's like a ending in like 5, 10, 20 pages, but in an sometimes in a novel it seems that for example the trauma porn part or the trauma dumping part, you can so like I think that if when I read like a short story based on a similar theme, it would be better for the readers and it wouldn't create such a heavy impact as did the novel. So um maybe that thing, and get a sense of reassurance that though the like though there would be an open ending, or though there would be like something that wouldn't satisfy me, like an unsatisfactory ending, but still I get that sense of reassurance that yeah, like something's gonna happen and that too soon. Yeah.
You can't just, you are not in that anticipation ke when is this going to happen.
I think short stories are great if you're in a reading slump. Short stories are just read a short story collection. You get back the confidence that I have the capacity to get through a book. And then it instant, whenever you finish a book, there's that instant motivation that now I want to start reading another one, because I just finished this 300, 400 pages, and now I can read more. And I also think that short stories are just like a very it's a difficult format to work with, because you have like a restricted amount of, like, yeah. But I also, because of that format that you have to keep in mind when you're writing it, it it can become so much more diverse and so much more like complex because of it. So I remember I read Birthday Stories by Murakami and I gave the book to you, and we both loved it because each story in that book, it engulfs you in a very different way than the last one. And it's just like each book has a character which is just so screwed up in such a different way than the last one.
And I love the connection. So it's like the birthday stories, and it each short story has the
A
day, yeah,
character
a
whose
character
birthday.
whose birthday is on that
Yeah.
particular day. And some stories are they have like a happy ending, some stories have a sad ending, some stories have
You
some,
can't figure out the
yeah.
ending.
And some stories just go, sometimes the birthday goes just as a normal day. So I'm always in that anticipation that the next story, like what ending or what narrative the next story would
Yeah,
have. And that is why I love it so much, because there's an interconnection between all of the stories
exactly.
because of the birthday theme. But also the stories are so different from each other that you cannot possibly cannot predict what is going to happen in the next story.
Yeah, I have another recommendation. It's Roar by Cecilia Ahern, and it's a short story collection which it's feminist literature, and each so there's this so every story has it explains something through a metaphor. So there's a story about a trophy wife, and it's about this lady who literally sits on the shelf of her house every day because she's a trophy wife, and that is her.
That is the
That, yeah.
metaphor.
So it literally puts out the metaphor. There's also a story, if I'm not wrong, about this woman who's biting herself, or she wakes up with bite marks. I don't remember because I read it quite long ago, but yeah, I'll write the name. And it's just all the stories are literal portrayals of
Of,
some stereotype that women go through, or some box that they're put into, and it's not an obvious metaphor.
yeah,
You understand the entirety of it by the end. When you read the last lines of the story, it all connects, and then you realize, oh, this isn't just a crazy story about a crazy lady. Like there's this one where the lady is eating photographs because she wants to keep her memories with her.
with her.
So she literally eats photographs. So it's, and it all make like the larger scheme of things reveals itself in the
Yeah,
end, and the satisfaction of just like that process, it's
yeah.
beautiful in
I
itself.
think I just can't get that satisfaction when I read a novel about it. But if I read like a
Yeah,
short story about it, I'd just get what the author wants
that's
to
what,
convey.
if you're reading a novel about this, the it would get redundant.
Yeah. So yeah, I was saying that I can't just read a novel about like this story or story having such themes, because it would just get redundant and you would just get tired of the character, because she is going to do the same thing over and over again for a period of, like, for a span of 300 pages or 400 pages, whatever. But then so it becomes monotonous. So I just think that short story is a very good portrayal, or a means through which you can portray the character effectively and still bring out the theme of the story.
Absolutely, I agree. There's also this very gory short story. I can't remember the name of it. I put it on the
Yeah.
screen. And the entire story is about these two women who have met on an internet forum, and they get into a dom sub relationship, but it's entirely through texting. But it gets so severe that the sub actually goes on to do things which threaten her safety just because the
Oh,
dom has asked her to, and it's also queer.
oh, I would love to
Yeah,
read
I'll,
that
I'll
book.
tell you. I'll put it up on the screen. So this was our episode all about books and literature. We hope that you enjoyed it just as we did making it for you. And be sure to tune in to Kala Cassette's next week's episode. Thank you.
Thank you.